Hello, friends and beautiful people out there. You can see from the title, this is a Bible study session. Um, Probably be a quicker one today. Yeah. I know I show it every time. This is probably why I done started covering my head, child. I know that's right, influence. Period. You become what you consume. So hey. Okay, so today we are talking about Bathsheba, and I don't know what to call it. Is it a magazine or a pamphlet? Um, what should I call it? Because I'll be calling this thing just all different things. I don't know. Um, I'll call it a magazine. So the story in the magazine is titled Sin and Redemption. Lust led to transgression, but God's forgiveness saves the day. So King David, the beloved and charismatic leader of the Israelites, was strolling on the roof of his palace one evening when he spied a beautiful woman, very beautiful, according to the biblical account, bathing in one of the homes below. Kings were as powerful then as they have been throughout history, so it was no difficult matter for David to demand that the woman be brought to him. And when he asked her to lie down with him, the Bible does not report the nature of the request. It is not surprising that she would acquiesce. Perhaps she was as filled with desire as he was, or maybe she felt powerless to resist, fearing the consequences were she to say no. Before she arrived, David had learned that her name was Bathsheba. He had also learned that she was married to a Hittite man named Uriah. Later, when David discovered that Bathsheba was pregnant, he compounded the sin of adultery by attempting to cover his crime. First, he had Uriah brought back from the battle in hopes that he have sex with his wife, thereby making the world believe that the baby on the way was fathered by Bathsheba's husband rather than by the philandering king. Then, when Uriah refused to sleep with his wife while his fellow soldiers were in jeopardy at the front, David sent a note via Uriah to his commander on the battlefield. Set Uriah in the forefront of the fighting, and then draw back from him, so that he may be struck down and die. Jesus, what the heck? Playing with my socks. These transgressions of the king, who would become known as the founder of Israel, were grievous indeed. Nathan, one in a long line of Israelite prophets, honored and protected even when they directly challenged the power of the ruling authorities, was unstinting in his condemnation of David's behavior. Why have you despised the word of the Lord to do what is evil in his sight? The child who was conceived in sin lived only 7 days, despite David's pleas to God to spare him. But David acknowledged his iniquity. The Bible reports it is the only blot on his long record of faithful service to God, and consoled Bathsheba, whom he married soon after Uriah's death. The next child born to the couple was Solomon. When David was on his deathbed, Bathsheba persuaded him to appoint Solomon the next king of Israel instead of his oldest living son, Adonijah, as was traditional. Solomon would go on to be revered for his wise stewardship of Israel, and Bathsheba would be mentioned in Matthew's report of the genealogy of Jesus many years later. Let me see. So this is, it's not letting me show the picture, but this is basically a picture of, I believe, well, it just says, as Bathsheba was bathing, David watched from high above. So David sent messengers to get her, and she came to him. I can't see no in there. Okay, so I'm going to read the scripture, and then I'm going to give my opinion. I got a little bit of piece of opinion. So her story happens in 2 Samuel chapter 11. And I'm probably just going to read just that chapter, I believe. And maybe I'll read Solomon's birth. Yeah. Because, yeah, these chapters be long, child. So 2 Samuel chapter 11, David and Bathsheba. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Job and his servants with him and all Israel. And they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from uncleanness. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." So David sent word to Job, send me Uriah the Hittite." And Job sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David when Uriah came to him, David asked how Job was doing, and how the people were doing, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." And Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, "Have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Job and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing." Then David said to Uriah, "Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. And David invited him, and he ate in his presence and drank, so that he made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his Lord, but he did not go down to his house. In the morning David wrote a letter to Job and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, "Set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him, that he may be struck down and die." And as Job was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew that there were valiant men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Job, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite also died. Then Job sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and he instructed the messenger, "When you have finished telling all the news about the fighting to the king, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, 'Why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall, who killed Abimelech and the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast an upper millstone on him from the wall, so that he died at Thebez? Why did you go so near the wall? Then you shall say, Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also.'" So the messenger went and came and told David all that Job had sent to him to tell. The messenger said to David, "The men gained and advantaged over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also." David said to the messenger, "Thus shall you say to Job, 'Do not let this matter displease you, for the sword devours now one and now another. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him.'" When the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah her husband was dead, she lamented over her husband. And when the mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife, and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. And then I'll read Solomon's birth, which is in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 24. Then David comforted his wife Bathsheba and went in to her and lay with her. And she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him and sent a message by Nathan the prophet. So he called his name Jedediah, because of the Lord. And Jedediah means beloved of the Lord. That's funny because, well, I guess it shouldn't be funny, but it's interesting because I watched, what's the name of the daggone movie? the Book of Clarence, and they characterize Jedediah as like the worst person in the town. So that's interesting. But I guess I could see how somebody who is known to be beloved of the Lord could become that. Um, but let's talk about Bathsheba. There is no dialogue from her except how she felt about her husband's death. And it's likely that she went up to the, like, being called by the king. If I'm going to put it in the context of that time, anybody would have went, man, woman, child. And so from that context, I can infer that she probably had no idea that um that those were his intentions. um and so seems like Bathsheba was simply a innocent victim of a powerful man, because even had she even said no to going up there, they would have came and snatched her. Because if he had so much power, if King David had so much power to be able to orchestrate her husband's death unbeknownst to her, I imagine he could have orchestrated her death had she refused to come and see him. And he could have arranged her death even once she was there and had refused for him to come into her. So shout out to God for being forgiving, because that is horrifying. This story is not even about her. This story is about David. This story is about David feeding his own personal desires. So I hate that for her, actually. Yeah, I feel like when I read this before, well, the parts that I highlighted were that he spied a beautiful woman walking up above on the palace, bathing in one of the homes, which means she was in the privacy of her home, bathing. And it also highlighted that it is not surprising that she would acquiesce. He was a king, the king of Jerusalem. And I imagine the way they described, everybody was basically not really around because all the men were off at war. And it seems like Bathsheba didn't have like any kids or anything, so she wasn't. Dang, that's messed up. I think there was the part that kind of stuck out to me that I didn't highlight from like the excerpt in the magazine was, I imagine Nathan is, well, no, that wouldn't be the same person. At least there was, so Nathan was critical of David. But yeah, like I said, men who follow men who follow the doctrine, this doctrine, are very blessed, because it, from what I can tell, it seems like, and I'm still in the first, I guess I'm still in the Old Testament. I don't really know. And it only focusing on the women takes out a lot of the context, or only focusing on the women that are highlighted in this magazine takes out a lot of context. But from what I have read so far of all these different women's chapters, there's war going on, there's people being conquered, there's land being conquered, there's land being foraged and cared for, there's temples and places of worship, there's prophets. And so in this context, men do whatever they want, and all that they need to do when they've transgressed is to pray and everything will be fine. Because, yeah, even it says that the Bible reports him sleeping with Bathsheba as the only blot in his long record of faithful service to God. And you know what? I guess that is a lesson for forgiveness for me, because man, it just it just seems as though, like, this is not even, like I said, this is not Bathsheba's story. I would love to and I probably can find more information about her, cuz I read this before, or at least I read the excerpt from the magazine, and I felt that I got something from it before, but now that I've read the excerpt again and also read the Bible scripture about it, it's given that this story is not about her. This story is about the transgressions of a king who later was acknowledged his, because it wasn't only that he took in another man's wife, he then conceived with another man's wife and then killed the husband. So that's more than one blot, in my opinion. But I'm not God. I ain't no judge. But it looked crazy to me. And I imagine it probably looked crazy to the townspeople, but it's like, what, I guess the cover story, and that's why they went over this whole excerpt of the story of what happened when Uriah went back out, for Job to come back and give what the cover story was going to be, for when the townspeople start asking around of how on earth was Bathsheba pregnant if her husband been gone at war, and even when he came back he slept at the king house, so how's she pregnant? So anybody with well, I won't say anybody, but anybody with critical thinking could put two and two together, regardless of this cover story that him and Job done conjured up. So but shout out to Bathsheba for having the beauty to be noticed by a king. That's some supreme beauty right there. And shout out to God for giving King David so that Solomon could come to be, and he was revered for being a steward of Israel. So shout out to that. Let's see about Solomon's story a little bit. It's so interesting. Like I'm seeing as I'm going through and reading these different stories. Um, I'm seeing that there's a lot of names in here that Black people love to use. But I don't have no opinion on it, but it's just interesting. And obviously I've seen the insides of a Bible before. Like, I used to go to church and get the word. I just never read it personally for myself as an adult. So this is just fun and exhilarating and like, oh wow, so interesting type thing for me. So this was a really short one. I You know what? I'm gonna stay on and see if I can find more information about Bathsheba. I'm gonna put Bathsheba lore. Side note, I actually knew a girl in high school whose name was Bathsheba. And I think her family was Rastafarian, because she had locks from when we were in high school. She was really the only girl who I went to school with who had locks, and I believe she still has her locks, which is really beautiful. I wouldn't be I mean, where I'm from, it's a lot of Caribbean people. So if she wasn't Jamaican, she was probably from some island, and I wouldn't doubt her people was probably Rastafarian. So that's my connection to it. But let me see. Guess I can't really find anything. It certainly doesn't mention anything about her having any fault, because in this she was already owned by somebody, and she got called on by a man more powerful than the man who owned her. So there was no, even if she had had say, they would have called her they would have called her treacherous. So shout out to her for shutting the fuck up, I guess, maybe. um Let me see. Yeah, nothing is really saying anything much more. Let me see if I could maybe. They mentioned, let me see, who is Ilium? Maybe that'll give me more insight. Bathsheba, da, 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 da. Mentioned, da, 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 who's credited. Yeah, it's not even saying too much about. It's not even saying too much about her pappy. I wanna. I want to research a list of all the different peoples that they mention in the Bible, and like what that means and stuff. Because what is a Hittite person? But just from a simple Google search, it says Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, and Jacob and Leah were all buried. Okay, that has nothing to do with this. All buried in the cave of which Abram had purchased from. So it sounded like Hittites were Egyptian, and they was buying land from them so that they could be buried somewhere prestigious. Hmm. So Hittites originated from Canaanites, which I've read about that. Huh. Shout out to research and information, but I'm going to wrap this up. My next story will come out of Exodus. Does Exodus happen before Psalms? Huh. I don't know. That'll be an interesting. So I imagine Exodus has a meaning. Exodus. Okay, so this come before Exodus came before Second Samuel. Huh. Interesting that they put Bathsheba before this next one. Um, Speaking of, Prince of Egypt is definitely one of my favorite movies. But you know what? That'll be my movie rental tonight, and we're gonna be talking about Exodus next week. And that's all. Um, this is exciting for me to be doing. I know that as I recorded, nobody's currently watching, but if somebody ever stumbles upon this, thank you for watching. And I'll be back next week talking about another woman in the Bible.